hate to say that, we don't have any certification, so we need DIs to come forward from the deaf community. However, they also need to be able to understand these code ethics. And if they help with interpreting, they can't go out and tell everybody because of confidentiality rule and all the other tenets that we're going to discuss here. So yes, Eastern Kentucky has a different culture here. Very different than Louisville. And it doesn't matter if you're hearing or deaf, the culture is very different. And I may not be sensitive to Eastern Kentucky culture. And let me give you an example, just something, you know, what I didn't know. It's not from here, but, you know, Native American Indians, you know, the reason I'm spelling it, because we do Native American, that sign, and then the Indian sign, but now it's this sign here. Okay? That's how it's signed now, and so that you have a chief, and I was talking with him, and he said he just is so sick and tired of interpreters using black clothing. Did you know that black clothing is interpreter culture? Because it's a good background. Well, look at me tonight. Don't even look at what I'm wearing tonight. I did poor planning today. Why did I even bring that example up? But the chief said that black clothing of any Native American deaf individuals, when they see interpreters with black clothing, they look down. And the reason they look down is because black clothing shows that you're in mourning. It means that someone has passed, or that could even mean something as evil. So when they look at black clothing, it impacts them pretty hard, and they have to look away. And then the interpreter will say, well, they didn't really look at me. They're not understanding me because they're looking all around and not looking at me. But the reason they're not is because of the issue with the clothing and their culture. So do we, as interpreters, know that? Well, I had never heard that. That was so new to me, and I had just found that out last week. RID needs to explain that. So if you're out more west where there are Native American Indians, then you need to know how to dress and not dress in black, maybe blue, or definitely not what I'm wearing this evening. All the interpreters have black on this evening. Oh, we have somebody in pink. You know, maybe green, yellow. Oh, she's got blue on back there. So that's a cultural difference that I didn't even know. And that could cause that deaf person to not get the correct information because of that situation. So if you need a CDI or a DI, you need to request that. I would love to hear of more requests of CDIs or DIs so we could raise the number of DIs in our state.
Now, you can make that request to the state agency that you're working with. You can call the commission. Let me back up. The request was, who do we make that to? How do we make that request to the agency that we're working with? I have a similar question. So if, when you make the appointment and you say, I need an interpreter with a doctor or whatever, you know, that's pretty common. At that time is when you say, I would like to have an interpreter, and then you make that request at that time when you're making the appointment, correct? Yes, she brings up a good point. You don't go to the interpreter and say, hey, I have an appointment over here at this agency, come with me. That's not the appropriate way to do it. I know it's quite easy to do that. We oftentimes get calls from agencies or from a company or the like that says, what's going on? This deaf individual showed up with an interpreter and now they're billing me for $200. I didn't even know what was going on. And so I have to give a long explanation as to what it is, and then we have to backtrack to those individuals and say, you need to inform that company ahead of time. So where do you need to go? You know, you're going to the dentist, you have an appointment with the dentist, for example, and you have to have a root canal. Are we going to pull it or not? And the dentist says, hey, it's not important to have an interpreter. It's like, you know, they'll dismiss it and they'll fight you on that. You know, I guarantee you they will. But if you say, I need to have an interpreter, I need to have an interpreter, I need to have an interpreter, why do you say I need to have an interpreter? And if you look at our website, you can download that information why it's important to have an interpreter here. And so, well, they're like, well, we don't see it's necessary. Then you can say, well, let me explain to you what I need. I made my appointment 2 or 3 weeks ahead, and then you say, well, you have the interpreter, you're not going to have the interpreter, then call the commission immediately and have us advocate for you. And it's like, well, they're not understanding what the needs are. And it's like, you know, we may communicate okay, but then, you know, Dr. Smith, your dentist, you have a patient who is having a dental emergency and it says, oh, I'm so sorry, but I can't afford. The interpreter's like, well, you're saying you can't afford, but we'll try to negotiate on your behalf and explain to them that it is a medical necessity, that it is covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. We send them factual information and we try to provide them with all the information that they need. And so then you show up at the doctor's appointment and you get the interpreter, great. And say, well, you showed up with no interpreter, then you can say either we move forward because my tooth hurts and you'll move forward without the interpreter, write your notes and do whatever you need to do. Or you can say, forget it, I will come back once you have the interpreter here. And it says, well, I can't serve you then. Then we'll ask them to put it in writing, I refuse to serve you because you are deaf and need an interpreter. And then we can file suit. We have evidence to do so. So it's not an easy task, I realize that. It's hard being deaf. And I hate to say that it's easier to be in a wheelchair. You get more sympathy than you do as a deaf individual. You know, if I'm trying to enter a building and they have to set a ramp in, the cost is a one-time fee for them to make that accessible. But for a deaf individual, you can't look at me and say, oh, that's deaf, that's hearing, and interpreter services are an ongoing cost. So they oftentimes don't understand that as well. Number 3, conduct. And our time is limited. And we only have this place until 10 o'clock, but I want to move on to your issues, so I'm going to move through these tenets rather quickly. If you don't mind, I'll move through these fast. And so conduct is interpreters must conduct themselves in a manner that's appropriate to the specific interpreting situation. So Nana, if you'll come forward. So is this about the conduct, or what do you want me to pull up? It's the next slide, I believe. Move forward, and let me try to find it here. No, we need to go back. It's that very last one. It's the third, I think it's the third bullet. Okay, it's the third bullet on this page. As you see, you got the first bullet, second bullet, third bullet. Okay, I'm addressing the third bullet here. And this is from personal experience. I have a number, I hope you all understand, let me interject. So the first, second, and third bullet means what? The conduct that's appropriate is not important about the numbers. There are a number of things that come up. So I just want to explain to you. Nina is going to give you one example that you need to be aware of. Mrs. Nina. Okay. So on bullet number 3, I am an experienced CDI. I can't move forward without an interpreter. I have to have someone like Vicki Brashear or Linda Bozeman or any number of interpreters who are in this room work with me as a team. So they'll sign to me what the person has said in English. And so then I work with individuals who are out in the state, and I have to adjust my language to fit with their language abilities, whatever those language abilities may be. I match their communication styles. So we negotiate on what that is. I can't function without a hearing interpreter, but my experiences with other second interpreters has been very good. It's been marvelous experiences that I've had thus far. Sometimes I have to transliterate, but what we do is that I understand what you're saying, but then I change that to match their communication needs. So you as the hearing interpreter will listen to the individual who's speaking in English, you convert it to sign language, and then I convert it yet again. I had the recent experience of going to Arizona for 3 months. We have a home there, and so I applied for interpreting work there. I got called in for a deaf individual, and so the person who came, oh my gosh, that was a terrible experience for me. Now this individual, what we found out later was the deaf client hated this interpreter, but the meeting that they were at was quite important. Now I had worked with this individual with other interpreters, and it worked quite well, but with this particular hearing interpreter, the deaf individual had had a bad experience with them. And so I was aware that they had some history. And the client was not cooperative because of the experience that they had had with this particular hearing interpreter. So for me, that hearing interpreter had broken the code of ethics because the hearing interpreter was aware that this deaf individual did not like them and so should not have accepted the assignment in the first place. What a waste of time, what a waste of money to show up on an assignment that they already knew the deaf individual and they did not do that. In my opinion, the interpreter wanted the money that was involved with the case instead of looking at the needs of the deaf individual. So because they had a conflict prior to my arriving, it caused the individuals to not then want me as well. I felt like I was not at fault. It was because of tenet number 3, where it says avoid contact or perceived conflict of interest which may interfere with the effectiveness of the interpreting assignment. Virginia adds, this is a good example. If for some reason you know that that deaf individual, hard of hearing individual, and you don't get along, or that you don't get along with that particular interpreter, but it's like, I don't like Susie, whoever, just, who is that deaf individual? Oh, okay. Who's the deaf person? They give you the name, Susie Frank. Well, I have a conflict of interest. We have another job. I can't accept this assignment. Just back out. That's the simplest way to do it. It's like, well, Susie, no way am I taking her. We're not, we don't get along, or we're at odds. We don't need to be backstabbing each other, or I won't interpret for this individual ever. That's a violation of the code of ethics. You can't do that, but all interpreters have to say is, okay, once they find out who that individual is, it's like, oh, okay, oh, I'm sorry, I have a conflict, I have another assignment. That's all they have to say. Keep it clean and simple. Because if you go ahead and move into that situation and interpret, it's just going to cause problems in the future. If you've got a drug user, or if you've been drinking, the interpreter is not supposed to do this before an assignment, because that's a violation of code of ethics as well. Passing out business cards to a deaf individual, saying, oh, only use me, just pay me directly, you need to use me only. Only use me as your interpreter, we'll have direct contact. You don't have to have other interpreters involved. I'll be your sole interpreter. And so, this is my card. They start passing out the cards, and then deaf individuals are like, what? What's going on here?
I got something major to say on this issue. In fact, this was the main topic I wanted to come here to discuss tonight. We are finding that, and I just recently went to the Kcdhh about this very same issue. We are finding that either way, I'm either in the spectrum, in the public or the private spectrum, the deaf community is getting through. The public agencies, entities, will not hire an interpreter that's not going through an agency. They want the agency to do the drug test and background check, the billing, all that. They won't hire. On the other hand, we got the state agency, which goes through the commission, the access center. They will not hire an agency interpreter. Here in Eastern Kentucky, we, the deaf community, are getting screwed by the policy of both the commission and the policy of the private sector. This has got to change because the consumer is losing their choice. And I mean, like I said, I addressed me and Dodie and Juanita. We went and talked to the Kentucky Board of the Interpreters to see what we can do about changing that in the private sector. Because it's a contract. They won't hire, we show up and, oh, I hate that interpreter. Or, this is a friend, I don't want them to know my personal something. Well, I'm sorry, we can't get anybody else because we have a contract with this agency. Excuse me, no. On the other hand, then, I go to a meeting at DCBS. I want an interpreter that I work with in court that is familiar with my case, that understands what's going on, and I hear from the commission, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that because it's an agency. We're getting screwed on either end. And we need to do something to address that. And I know you can't do about the public sector, the private sector, but the public sector is on the commission, and we need to do something about that. So.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought up this issue. And you want to add to that? Yes. Just a few weeks ago, I think even just last week, or maybe a few weeks ago, I was in contact with my counselor. I work with a private counselor. I gave them the interpreter's phone number, and they said that's fine. We wanted to make the appointment for my next meeting. And so I showed up for my appointment, and the interpreter showed up, and they were there, and that was fine. And so I tried to explain to them this is the interpreter that's working in this area. And it just happened that another interpreter showed up and was like, what? And I was confused, so I had contacted the counselor and said, please, you get in touch with the interpreter, and I gave them the phone number of a local interpreter that was available. And when I arrived on site, that interpreter was with me, or, had the interpreter that you wanted, yes, the interpreter that was my preferred interpreter. Well, how did they know to show up? I gave the number to the agency and told the counselor to call this interpreter, and they did. And so they said fine, and so that interpreter showed up, and that was someone that was from the local area. And then an additional interpreter showed up. So why did this additional interpreter show up? Because my insurance, who is WellCare, that they needed to provide the interpreter for the assignment. So we need to find out then if you went down whether WellCare provides that. So I was somewhat confused. We had someone in the local area who was made available, and so they felt they needed to leave. And so I asked, how did you know to come up for this assignment? And so I asked them directly, how did you find out about this? And they said, how did you know that I was going to be here? Well, I knew through my insurance card, WellCare, they contacted me, and that I was supposed to provide interpreting services for you. So does that mean that there's a contract with WellCare for insurance to cover interpreters? And they said yes. So now my question is, I understand that, yes, she signed, but how it hit me was that I had a preferred interpreter that it was from our area. So why, this person had to drive all the way from Lexington to cover this assignment. So, did you understand the interpreter that they sent? Fairly well. Now, when you say fairly well, either yes, I understood it, yes, I did understand that interpreter. Yes, you did understand that interpreter. So, but, should we try to support the local interpreters? Because that was a trust issue for me. And Virginia said, thank you, that's what it was. It was a trust issue. Okay.